Okay, so now we need two pieces. One of the pieces we need, let's get out of this. I was in this mode, this this object, and I don't need this bin modifier here to be, I don't need to manipulate it anymore, so I can just convert this back to an editable poly and collapse that stack. And what I want to do now is make a new box, and this is for the little clasp thing that goes on, and I'm just going to bring it up. And all I'm doing is, well, I'm going to use this box for a couple different things. But let's get rid of these 5 segments. And so what I want to do is I'm going to go, I'm going to right click and convert it to an editable poly. And I'm going to go ahead and go get an edge. And I'm going to select this whole edge. And I'm going to come down here to create shape from selection, and I want to make sure it's linear, and I'll call this metal wire. So if I move this over, which I want to have the whole box, not just a sub-object portion, I want to take this wire and I want to grab the 4 corners, and I want to do a fillet. So let's do something about like that. And then at the top, I want to turn on, if you remember, rendering and then enable in viewport. So we get something like this, and we can take it down just a little bit. So that's going to be for the handle. So let's go ahead and get out of sub-object mode, and I want to center this, so right click and we'll center it, and we'll go ahead and center it here, and I'm just going to drag it up, and I'll drag it out, and it just so happens to be almost a perfect width. Let's bring it down a little bit, something like that. So if I go, it reminds you this is just a spline. So I can grab sections of this spline and move it. Should be able to move it in a little bit this way. And I want to make sure I get the whole corner. Whoops. Move that in, and let's take these two and we'll move it like that. Because what I'm really moving is not, what I'm really moving is, if I turn off enable and viewport, I'm really just moving the spline. I'm not actually moving the whole object. So if I enable that in viewport again, you can see what it looks like. And it's just so let's get the whole thing. I want to center the pivot, so I'm going to click on this object and say effect pivot only and center to object, and then turn it back off. And by doing that, I can rotate this just a tad, like if I wanted to rotate it, and then just bring it down like so. Alright, so what I want to do now is this other piece that we left. Let's go ahead and center that, and we'll just drag it up and drag it over. And it's going to be a little wide, so we're going to scale it in this direction and this direction, and also in that direction a little bit. So something like that. And we'll move it this direction, like right here. And we want to put it right on the surface of our lunchbox. And what I'm going to do is just, I'm going to go to convert to an editable poly. I'm going to grab the top of this, and we're just going to scale it in a couple directions. So I'm going to scale it like this way, just a tad bit, and I'm going to grab this edge here, and I'm going to move it in a couple different directions. I'm going to move it down like this and forward like that. So what I want to do is I want to grab all of the edges, with the exception of the bottom edges, but all the edges up here, and I want to chamfer them. So I'm going to right click and say chamfer, and let's just put a segment in here like that. And I probably wouldn't worry about the quad thing. If you do want to worry about the quad thing, you're going to click here, tell it to be quad, and then remember this has to be less than to round it out. So something like that. And say OK. So you're going to take this and copy it over to the other side. So I could probably mirror it if I affect pivot only. I want to move this pivot to the center on the X. So I'm going to right click here. And so now this has a pivot right there. So when I tell it to be mirrored, I can tell it to copy, and it's going to copy it over there. And this one, I could do the same thing. Come up here, affect pivot only. And the pivot's got a rotation on this, so we want to go ahead and take off that rotation, and we want to go ahead and move it on the X to the center. So that way, when I do the same thing with this one, it copies it over. So like that. So now we're done with our actual handle, and we're going to work on the little piece to lock it.